Why was the field so quiet? Not the kind of quiet that meant peace. This was the kind that pressed against the ears, heavy, suffocating. She had been trained to listen for patterns, the clatter of distant engines, the faint ripple of radio static, the uneven rhythm of boots over gravel. But here, the silence itself felt like a warning. She steadied her breathing, cheek pressed against the worn stock of her rifle. The scope framed the world in fragments, tree line, broken wall, a sliver of empty road. Still nothing. She blinked once, twice, her eyes dry from holding them open too long. A soldier's patience wasn't about waiting. It was about staying sharp while time tried to grind the edges dull. And yet she couldn't shake the thought. Maybe this silence wasn't the enemy's doing. Maybe it was her own. Her name wasn't whispered in the barracks, not the way some soldiers carried reputations that grew like wildfire. She was the quiet one, the one who didn't brag about shots taken or missions survived. And maybe that was why, at the briefing table 3 nights ago, her words had slid into the air like smoke, seen for a second, then gone, ignored. She had told them something was off, that the map didn't make sense, that the route they insisted on was too clean, too obvious, but no one had leaned in, not even the commander. They nodded, distracted, moving on to the louder voices. The silence in that room had felt just like this one now, heavy, suffocating. She shifted, the butt of the rifle creaking softly under her glove. A gust of wind brushed dust along the ground, carrying the scent of charred metal. Somewhere far behind her, a truck's engine turned over and cut out. Then stillness again. This was the edge of the field. Not a battlefield in the cinematic sense, no fireballs, no chaotic charges, just a stretch of abandoned farmland that had long since forgotten the taste of harvest. The grass was brittle, yellow with thirst, stalks snapping under boots like bones. And beyond it, a village. Broken windows, doors hanging open. A place emptied faster than life could explain. She lowered her scope, letting the raw sight of it wash over her. The world looked different without magnification. Less focused, more uncertain. And maybe that was the truth of it. This wasn't clarity, it was fog. Her throat was dry. She swallowed, felt the scratch of thirst, but didn't reach for her canteen. The smallest movement mattered. The smallest hesitation could cost. Instead, she let her thoughts drift, just a fraction, never fully. She remembered her father's voice. A memory she didn't invite, but one that came unannounced. He hadn't been a soldier, not in the uniformed sense. He was a farmer, fields of wheat, not minefields. His resolve was different, softer. He believed in staying, even when seasons failed. She had asked him once, at 14, why he wouldn't leave the land that kept breaking him. Because, he had said, standing in that wide silence of their own land, a field only says end if you let it. Otherwise it waits. And so do I. It was strange, how those words followed her even here. The comms unit at her side crackled once, then cut. Static. She reached for it carefully, adjusting the frequency. Nothing but dead air. Her jaw tightened. Where were the others? She had been set forward, point overwatch, eyes on the approach. They should have checked in. Even one word, even a click. Her mind darted back to the briefing, to the faces across the table. Some young, eager, not yet weathered. Others older, worn by deployments that stacked on their shoulders like weights. She had sat there quietly, watching them, listening, and she'd seen something in their eyes, something unspoken. Fear, not of the mission, not of the enemy, but of themselves, of failing, of being the one remembered for breaking the chain. She had wanted to speak then, to tell them that fear was nothing to hide, that it lived in her too every time she lined up a shot, but instead she stayed quiet, because she knew what her words did in that room. They slid away, disappeared. A crow lifted from the far tree line, wings cutting the silence. Just one bird, but it drew her scope again. The branches swayed, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, she thought she saw movement beneath them. A shadow, low, deliberate, then gone. Her pulse quickened. She adjusted the scope inch by inch, dragging her breath into steadiness. Empty, just empty branches. But no, the silence had shifted. She could feel it. It wasn't stillness anymore, it was holding its breath. She pressed her lips together, whispered under them, almost inaudible, "Not yet, not me." It was less a prayer, more a reminder. She had come too far, given too much, to let an unseen hand write her ending here. Her earpiece hissed suddenly, the voice sharp rushed. "Delta 1 status, repeat status." She exhaled slowly, pressing the mic. "Eyes on, field is," she hesitated, how to name silence, how to call it in. "Uneasy." A pause, then, "Hold position, reinforce moving up." She clicked once in acknowledgement, then settled back against the earth. The weight of the rifle was familiar now, like bone against bone. She closed one eye, lined her breathing again, and let the scope frame her world once more. Minutes stretched, the kind that bent the mind, that tested whether focus could survive against the slow erosion of waiting. She thought of the village ahead. Who had left in such a hurry? What had they seen that the maps did? She remembered another face, her younger brother standing in their kitchen the night before she shipped out. He hadn't argued. He hadn't told her to stay. He had only said, "Just don't let them silence you. Promise me that." She had nodded, though she hadn't told him how silence worked out here. It wasn't forced. It was chosen. Sometimes the strongest thing you could do was say nothing at all. But tonight, in this field, silence had teeth. The faint crunch of footsteps reached her then. Distant, careful, not her own. Her hand tightened on the grip. Through the scope, the edge of the field shifted, a figure crouched low, moving with purpose. Not friendly, not theirs. Her breath caught, "Not yet, not me." She waited until the figure stepped clear, framed in her lens. Her finger brushed the trigger, soft, deliberate. The silence pressed harder, daring her. And in that pressure, she found her answer. She didn't fire, not yet. Because this wasn't just a shadow crossing a field. This was a message. Something she hadn't told the others, not yet. Something that could change everything. And in that held breath, the story truly began. Why didn't she take the shot? The question echoed louder than the silence itself. Anyone else in her position would have squeezed the trigger without hesitation. One figure in an abandoned field, unmarked, unannounced, moving with stealth. It should have been simple. But war was never simple. She eased her finger from the trigger, letting the scope drift as her pulse slowed. Her chest rose and fell in shallow rhythms, every muscle in her body reminding her of the decision she'd just made. It wasn't mercy. It wasn't fear. It was something else, an instinct she didn't yet have the words for. The figure crouched, paused, then moved again, hugging the tree line, slipping closer toward the village ruins. Not a scout from her side, not a villager left behind. The gait was too deliberate, the silence too intentional. Whoever it was, they belonged to the reason this field felt wrong. Her earpiece crackled again. Delta 1, eyes still on. She pressed the mic lightly. Contact, one figure, east tree line, moving toward target zone. Engage if hostile. She closed her eyes for half a beat. Hostile. The word came easy to those at the other end of the channel. In a briefing room, in a safe tent, hostile was black and white. Out here it was shades of gray. Out here hostile had a face. Her cheek rested against the rifle stock again. The figure's movement slowed, as though sensing the invisible crosshairs trained on their back. She inhaled, steady, controlled. A sniper's breath. And in the space between inhale and exhale, memory intruded. Her first shot. Not here, not in this war, but years ago on the range. She had been 19. The rifle felt too big, the stock bruising her shoulder, her pulse so loud it rattled her hands. Around her the instructors shouted corrections, their voices sharp with impatience. She remembered feeling small, like a mistake waiting to happen. But then she had fired. The recoil punched her body, the world cracked open, and the round had landed dead center. The instructors stopped shouting. For a moment silence had been hers, not suffocating, not heavy, but earned. That was when she learned silence could speak. Her eyes snapped open, The figure was gone. Her heart lurched, a quick jolt of panic. She swept the scope fast but controlled. Empty branches, empty grass, shadows shifting but no target. She adjusted left, then right. Nothing. Her earpiece hissed again. Delta 1, report. She swallowed. Her voice came steady, but her hand was trembling now, just enough to feel it. Lost visual. Static filled the gap. Then, hold, reinforce ETA 4 minutes. 4 minutes, an eternity in an open field. She lowered the rifle slightly, scanning the terrain without magnification. The village windows seemed to stare back, hollow eyes watching her. Every creak of branch, every whisper of wind scraped against her nerves. She had been taught to trust her instincts, but instincts could betray, twisting silence into ghosts. Her jaw tightened. She forced herself still, forced her mind to slow. She wasn't 19 anymore. She wasn't the girl waiting for someone else to believe in her. She was the one holding this field, and fields didn't declare endings, not if she stayed. The wind shifted. Her ear caught at first the faintest crunch. Close now, too close. Her breath froze. Slowly she turned her head just enough. At the edge of her peripheral vision, a shape, human, deliberate, crouched barely 20 yards from her flank. How had they gotten so close? How had she missed it? Her chest tightened. No time for the rifle, too near. She reached down, silent, fingers brushing the grip of her sidearm. The figure paused as though sensing the air between them tighten. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then the figure lifted their head. And in that moment, through the dirt-streaked face, the shadowed eyes, something caught in her chest. This wasn't just an enemy. This wasn't a stranger. Recognition hit her like recoil. She couldn't name it yet, couldn't place the face, but deep in her bones she knew this was someone tied to the silence she carried, someone who carried a piece of her own story. The figure's eyes locked on hers, no weapon raised, no sound, just silence stretched thin like a wire between them. And for the first time in years, she felt the weight of choice pressing harder than the weight of her rifle. Because if she pulled the trigger now, she wouldn't just be ending a threat. She'd be cutting off an answer to a question she didn't even know she had. Her breath trembled. Not yet, not me, not them. Behind her, the rumble of boots grew louder, the reinforcements closing in. They would see this figure as hostile. They wouldn't hesitate. She had seconds. She lifted her hand, subtle, signaling the figure to stay low, stay hidden. A choice made without reason, or maybe with too much reason. Because somewhere inside, she knew this encounter wasn't random. This silence wasn't empty. And when the reinforcements arrived, crashing into the field with their voices and orders, she kept her eyes down her scope, pretending she had seen nothing, pretending the figure had never been there. But she knew better. She knew the silence had just spoken, and it was only the beginning. Why did she lie? The question wouldn't leave her alone. She told command there was nothing, no contact, no movement, just empty field. And yet she knew the truth. Someone had been there, someone who looked at her like they weren't supposed to. The reinforcements had spread out, rifles angled, boots crunching over the brittle grass. Their voices cut through the stillness, casual but sharp, like knives scraping metal. She moved among them silently, eyes on her scope, her words kept tight inside. "Nothing out here," one of them muttered, sweeping a sector too wide, too careless. Another laughed under his breath, too loud for this silence. They didn't feel it, the weight, the warning, the quiet that pressed against her lungs. But she felt it every step, every second. Her mind replayed the moment, the figure's face. The dirt, the shadow, the recognition she couldn't explain. It wasn't déjà vu, it wasn't coincidence, it was real. Her body had known before her mind could catch up. And that terrified her more than any enemy could. She kept her voice steady when they regrouped, field clear. A lie dressed in 2 words, simple, disposable. But lies had weight, and she felt this one press deep into her ribs. When they pulled back to the temporary command post, An abandoned farmhouse with broken shutters and the smell of rot. She stayed quiet, slipping to the edge of the room. Maps were spread on the table. Radios buzzed. Coffee went cold in tin cups. The others leaned in, talking routes, rotations, timetables. She watched them, watched how their mouths moved, how their hands gestured. None of them noticed her silence. That was the curse of it. She could disappear in plain sight. Her thoughts drifted, uninvited, back to her brother. The last night at home, he had handed her a folded piece of paper. She hadn't opened it then, she hadn't dared. She had tucked it into the lining of her pack and left before dawn. Weeks later, in a dirt-stained barracks, she had unfolded it. 2 words, scrawled in his uneven handwriting. Find her. She hadn't understood. She pressed the paper flat against her thigh, staring at it until the ink blurred. Find who? Why not tell her face to face? Why trust paper instead of voice? She never asked, he never explained, and then he was gone. A convoy accident, they said. A wrong turn, a wrong moment, in flames. No body to bring home. Just silence where his laughter used to be. She folded the paper again, tight, small. Carried it through every deployment, every firestorm, every night when her own silence threatened to crush her. She never showed anyone, never spoke of it. Until now, with that face in the field. Until the moment she thought, just for a heartbeat, that maybe she understood. Her hand brushed the inside of her vest, where the paper still hid, worn thin, the ink almost fatting. Find her. Was it possible? Could the figure in the field? No, impossible, and yet the impossible was often what war left behind. A voice snapped her back. You're too quiet again. She blinked, looked up. One of the younger soldiers, Martinez, was watching her, brow furrowed. He was 19, maybe 20, wide-eyed but trying to bury it under bravado. She saw through it, the way she always did. I'm listening, she said. Martinez gave a short laugh. Listening doesn't keep you alive. Talking does, making sure they hear you. He gestured at the others. You should speak up. Her lips almost curved into a smile. Almost. And say what? Martinez shrugged. Whatever keeps the silence off your back. The words hit harder than he knew. Silence off your back. If only it were that simple. That night sleep didn't come. The farmhouse floor creaked with every shift of boots, every turn of a restless body. Outside, the wind slid through the hollowed village, carrying with it whispers that sounded too much like voices. She lay still, eyes open, staring at the cracked ceiling, and in the darkness the field replayed itself again. The figure's eyes, the recognition, the choice not to pull the trigger. Her chest tightened. She mouthed the words soundless. Not yet, not me. But another voice rose inside her, softer, sharper. Find her. At dawn, when the others moved out, she lingered near the tree line. Her boots pressed into the dirt where she had first seen the figure crouch. She knelt, fingertips brushing the ground, as if the earth might still hold the imprint. And it did, a print, small, narrow, not boots, shoes, civilian. Her breath caught. Whoever it was, they weren't standard military, not dressed for combat, not armored, just here in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe exactly the right time. She looked toward the village. The windows still watched, hollow, patient. Something waited there. She adjusted her rifle strap, pressed her lips into a hard line, and followed. Not with the unit, not with orders, but with silence moving like shadow through brittle grass. Every step forward was a step deeper into questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. But she couldn't stop now, because silence had spoken, and she needed to know what it meant. Why did the village feel alive when no one was there? She stepped carefully through the brittle grass, boots pressing into earth that hadn't carried a harvest in years. The houses stood like hollowed teeth, roofs slumped, windows shattered, doors leaning open. Each doorway looked like a mouth frozen mid-scream. Her rifle stayed close to her shoulder, scope raised then lowered, her eyes switching between magnified fragments and the blur of her own vision. No movement, no sound, only the steady hum of wind slipping through broken wood and twisted rebar. And yet she felt watched. Her breath came slower, quieter. She scanned rooftops, alley corners, door frames where shadows thickened unnaturally. A crow perched on a bent antenna, tilting its head, unblinking. Its wings lifted, then it launched, the sudden rush startling against the silence. Her finger twitched near the trigger, too sharp, too loud. She let the crow go, her pulse settling back into patience. She remembered a lesson drilled into her years ago by an instructor she never liked but never forgot. The silence before contact isn't empty, it's full. Learn to hear what it's holding. And now she heard it. The absence of children's voices, of old men's coughs, of pots clanging, of footsteps that villages were supposed to hold. Silence wasn't the lack of life, it was the proof it had been ripped away. She moved deeper. A rusted swing creaked on its chain, though there was no wind strong enough to push it. She paused, scope lifting, tracking the motion. Nothing. Just the swing, groaning against its hinges, rocking itself to sleep. Her throat tightened. She thought of her brother again, the day before he died, how he had sat on the porch railing at home, whittling a stick into nothing, hands restless because words had failed him. That same restless silence lived here. Find her. The words scratched her skull again. She brushed her vest unconsciously, feeling the folded paper beneath the fabric. The mystery wasn't staying buried. Not anymore. Her boots pressed into gravel as she crossed into the village center. A dry fountain sat cracked in the square, its stone chipped, its basin filled with dust and a few wind-blown leaves. Around it, shops gaped open, shelves stripped, counters overturned. She stopped, something had shifted. A door just barely, a hinge whispering under strain. Her scope lifted. Far left, third building down. A bakery, maybe. Its door eased closed as though someone had been just inside. Her stomach clenched, she swallowed. Every instinct screamed to call it in, to bring the unit. But her hand stayed off the radio. She couldn't explain this. Couldn't put into words why this was hers to follow. She slipped closer, one step at a time, breath shallow, heart tight. The dust kicked under her boots, louder than she wanted. She froze at the doorway, pressing against the frame, listening. Silence again, heavy pressing. She slid her rifle upward, sighting through the crack. Nothing, shadows only. Then, barely audible, a breath, not hers. Her jaw locked. She pushed forward, rifle raised, eyes sweeping corners, edges, angles. The smell hit her first, old flour, dust, and something sharper, something metallic. Her boots crunched glass. And then she saw it. A figure crouched at the back of the room. The same one. Dirt-streaked face, narrow shoulders, eyes fixed on hers again with that unbearable recognition. They froze, mirror still. This time, the silence was louder than gunfire. The figure's lips parted. No sound came, just the faint tremor of a word caught in the throat. Then, barely audible, one syllable broke free. Her name. Her body locked. Cold surged through her veins. No one here should know her name. No one in this place, in this silence, should be able to reach her with it. She tightened her grip. Who are you? The words were sharper than she intended, voice low, cutting the silence in two. The figure flinched, then shook their head quickly, eyes wide. Their lips moved again, soundless this time. She read it, two words. Find her. Her chest seized. The folded paper burned against her side like fire. The floor creaked behind her. She spun, rifle snapping up. Two of her unit, Martinez and another, had followed, rifles angled, eyes narrowing as they saw the figure in the shadows. Contact, Martinez barked, already lifting his weapon. Wait, her voice cracked sharp, louder than she'd meant. Martinez froze, his finger hovering over the trigger. The silence swelled again, everyone caught in it, no one willing to be the first to break. Her rifle stayed steady, but her voice shook. They're not hostile. Martinez's eyes flicked to her. Then what are they? She didn't answer, Couldn't because she didn't know. All she knew was that the silence had delivered her here, to this figure, to this impossible moment. The figure's eyes burned into hers, pleading without sound. Her name, find her. And for the first time since she had entered the field, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself in months. Hoping. Why was her voice shaking? She spoken louder than she meant to, the words rushing out before she could control them. They're not hostile, and now the silence after those words was heavier than any she had carried before. Martinez kept his rifle trained on the figure. His knuckles whitened, jaw locked, eyes flicking between the shadowed face and her own. The other soldier beside him, older, calmer, whispered sharply, orders were clear. Engage unknowns. Her throat burned, not this one. The figure didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe too loud. Just crouched there in the dark, eyes locked on hers like they'd been waiting for this standoff. Like they knew the choice wasn't between life and death, it was between her silence and her voice. Martinez's voice cracked, low but fierce. You're protecting them, why? Her grip tightened on her rifle, not at Martinez, not at the figure, at herself, because she didn't have an answer that would satisfy him, or command, or even her own conscience. I know what I saw, she said, each word weighted, steady despite the tremor inside her. Martinez scoffed. What you saw, you lost visual earlier, you called the field clear, and now, what suddenly you know, you're acting like you're the only one with instincts. The older soldier stepped closer, voice colder. We're not here to guess. Orders are orders, unknowns are threats. You want to gamble with all of us. Her chest rose and fell faster now. The silence pressed, heavy, accusing. She looked back at the figure. Their lips moved again, barely, silently. The same two words, find her. It hit like a strike to the ribs. The folded paper in her vest seemed to throb against her skin. Her brother's scrawl, the unfinished story. She whispered, more to herself than to anyone else, they know something. Martinez heard, his face hardened. No, this is hesitation, and hesitation gets us killed. He raised his weapon higher, sighting the figure's chest. Her body moved before her mind could argue. She shifted, stepping between his rifle and the crouched figure. The silence snapped like a wire. Everyone froze. Martinez's eyes widened, disbelief etched into his face. What the hell are you doing? The older soldier hissed, step aside now. Her pulse thundered. Her voice came low, ragged but steady. Not until I know who they are. For a moment, no one breathed. Martinez's finger trembled on the trigger. The figure stayed frozen, eyes flicking between the three of them, lips pressed tight. The silence was so thick it felt like the walls themselves were listening. Finally, the older soldier lowered his rifle slightly, just enough to let the air move again. You're gambling with lives and you don't even realize it. His voice was sharp, cutting, but not loud. He didn't want command to hear this. Not yet. Martinez spat the words, she's compromised. The accusation landed heavy. Compromised, not just wrong, not just reckless, but untrustworthy, a threat inside the uniform. Her jaw clenched. You think I don't know the cost of hesitation. You think I don't know what silence does. Her voice cracked at the edges, more raw than she wanted it to be. I've buried more silence than you've ever carried. Martinez faltered just for a second, but the tension didn't fade. The figure moved then, just the smallest shift, hands raised slowly, palms open. They didn't speak, didn't plead, just looked at her again, eyes filled with something that wasn't fear, something closer to recognition. The silence thickened again. And then Martinez broke it. We're taking them in. Her breath hitched. She knew what taking in meant. It didn't mean safety. It didn't mean answers. It meant disappearance. Command didn't waste time on civilians caught in silence. Her chest tightened. Every instinct screamed. The field, the paper, the face. This wasn't random. This was the thread she wasn't supposed to find but couldn't let go of now. Not to command, she said, voice low, final. Martinez blinked, stunned. You don't get to decide that. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the tension crackle in the air between them. Then put it on me. Say it was my call. Say I hesitated, but they don't go to command. The older soldier's eyes narrowed, studying her face like he was trying to read something buried too deep. His voice dropped lower, steady but cold. You're choosing silence over your unit. Her chest rose and fell ragged. No, I'm choosing to listen to what it's holding. The words hung in the air. Martinez lowered his rifle a fraction, still glaring. The older soldier stayed quiet, unreadable. The figure crouched lower, breathing fast now, eyes wide with something between fear and hope. And for a brief moment, the silence didn't feel suffocating. It felt like the edge of a truth waiting to break. But truths had a cost, and she knew she had just put herself on the line for one she couldn't yet name. How long could she stand between them? The barrel of Martinez's rifle still hovered too close to her chest. The older soldier's silence cut sharper than words, and behind her, the figure's shallow breath seemed to echo in the broken bakery walls. She hadn't moved, hadn't stepped aside, and that choice weighed heavier with each second. Finally, Martinez exhaled through his teeth, jaw clenched. He lowered his weapon, but not in surrender. The movement was sharp, angry, his voice spitting the words. Fine, but this is on you. Whatever happens next, their blood's on your hands. Her hands tightened on her rifle. It already is, she almost said, but the words stayed locked in her throat. The older soldier stepped back a fraction, studying her. His eyes didn't hold anger, not yet. They held calculation, like a man deciding whether to speak his doubts now or save them for command. He finally muttered, "We can't drag this weight alone. The others will know." And that was the fracture, silent now, but widening with every heartbeat. She turned slowly to the figure. Their eyes locked again, filled with something she couldn't place. Not gratitude, not fear, something heavier, something personal. "Who are you?" Her voice was low, urgent, trembling at the edges. The figure hesitated, lips pressed tight as if words might break them. Then, barely above a whisper, they spoke. "Not safe here." Martinez scoffed, the sound sharp. "Oh, now they speak, convenient." She ignored him, leaned closer. "Why do you know my name?" The figure's eyes flickered, a storm behind them. Their mouth opened, then closed. The silence stretched again until her chest ached from holding it. Finally, two words slipped free, hoarse and fragile. "Your brother." Her breath caught like she'd been struck. Her knees threatened to give. The world blurred around the edges, sound rushing in her ears like a wave. Martinez frowned, confused. What the hell does that mean? She didn't answer. She couldn't. The words "your brother" rang in her skull, louder than any gunfire. She reached instinctively for her vest, fingertips brushing the folded paper still hidden there. The paper that had haunted her since the day he died. "Find her." Her throat burned, her voice came out raw. "You knew him." The figure nodded, small, quick, like even that was dangerous to admit. She stepped closer, voice cracking. "How? Tell me." The older soldier cut in sharply, his tone iron. "This isn't the place, not the time. If they know something, command needs to hear it, not you alone." Her pulse hammered. He was right, but he was also wrong. She knew what command did with inconvenient truths. They buried them, filed them away until silence swallowed everything. Martinez shook his head. "This is a waste of time. Every second we sit here, we're exposed. This whole village is compromised." She wanted to argue, wanted to scream, but the figure's eyes held hers, silent, pleading, as if the weight of the answer they carried could only be given to her. Her chest ached. She whispered almost to herself, "Not yet, not me." The older soldier caught it, his brow furrowing. "What did you say?" She didn't repeat it. Instead, she turned to him, voice steadier now. "We move, but they move with us, under my responsibility." Martinez's jaw dropped. "You've lost it." But the older soldier didn't argue. He just stared at her, measuring. Finally, he nodded once, curt, unwilling but binding. Your responsibility, your silence if it fails. She breathed out ragged. A line had been drawn, a choice made. They moved out of the bakery, the figure staying low, half shielded by her presence. Every step echoed louder in her head than boots on broken ground. Every turn of the corner felt like a trap waiting to spring. But beneath all that weight, a single thought pulsed steady. Her brother hadn't left her silence. He'd left her a thread, and now that thread had found its way back into her hands. The first crack of gunfire came like a hammer through glass. She dropped instantly, instincts pulling her to the dirt. Martinez cursed beside her, bullets tearing through the bakery's crumbling doorway they just stepped past. Dust rained down, the air alive with the whistle and thud of rounds. Ambush. Her heart seized in her chest, not from fear but from the brutal timing. They'd lingered too long. She'd lingered too long. Position, the older soldier barked, voice cutting through the chaos. She shoved the figure down, pressing their head into the floorboards as splinters erupted overhead. Their eyes burned into hers, wide, silent, still carrying that weight from before. Your brother. Not now. Her rifle was already up, sights searching. Shadows flickered at the edge of the collapsed street outside, muzzle flashes sparking from hidden corners. 2, maybe 3 shooters, maybe more. Martinez fired back blindly, anger in every round. Told you this was a damn trap. The accusation wasn't wrong. It clamped onto her chest like a vice, but she bit down on it, channeling it into focus. Cover left, she snapped, shifting her aim. She squeezed, controlled bursts, glass shattering as her rounds cracked out across the street. The older soldier moved with practiced calm, barking adjustments. Suppress their flank. Martinez, 2 o'clock, upper window. The fight narrowed her vision, but beneath it another thread pulled, because the figure hadn't moved. They didn't cower, didn't scramble. They just stayed low, hands pressed flat to the floor, eyes never leaving her. And in those eyes she saw no panic, only recognition. Another burst ripped through the wall, shoving her back against the plaster. Her lungs burned from the dust. Martinez cursed again. We're not making it out unless we drop weight. His meaning was clear. Drop the figure. Her stomach clenched. No. The word cut out sharper than the gunfire. Martinez whipped toward her, fury on his face. They're slowing us down. They are the trap. Shut it and shoot, the older soldier growled, pinning Martinez back to the fight. But the tension had cracked wide open. Trust was bleeding out faster than the rounds they fired. She gritted her teeth, sighting again. Her trigger finger steadied, squeezing off another burst that dropped a shadow from the upper floor across the street. 1 less, 2 more to go. Silence fell for a breath, a dangerous silence, then footsteps fast, closing. They weren't staying at range anymore. Her chest locked tight. They're coming in. The older soldier's eyes narrowed. He gestured sharply. Fall back point, alley west, move. Martinez shot her a look, pure venom. Not with them. She ignored him, grabbed the figure's arm. With me. The figure rose, unsteady but following. Martinez's muttered curse burned in her ears. They broke from cover. Bullets chased them, ricocheting off stone, sparking from shattered carts. She half-dragged the figure, lungs screaming as they sprinted. Martinez fired back wildly, covering. The older soldier's movements were crisp, deliberate, his eyes everywhere at once. They slid into the alley, shadows swallowing them. The sudden quiet was deafening. Her ears rang from the fight, her pulse hammering. They paused only a moment, just enough to breathe, to listen. The streets behind roared with shouts, enemy voices closing in. Martinez spun on her, face twisted with rage. This is insane. You're gambling all of us on a ghost story. Her voice cracked. It's not a story. Then prove it. His shout shook the alley walls. Why are they worth dying for? Why the hell are we worth less than them? The older soldier's silence was heavier than the gunfire. He wasn't siding with her. Not yet. He was waiting, measuring. Her throat burned. Words clawed at her, but none of them would hold. Not here, not like this. But then the figure spoke. Their voice was hoarse but steady. Because her brother trusted me. Martinez froze. The older soldier blinked. The alley seemed to narrow around them, pulling tight. Her stomach twisted. Hearing it aloud was different than imagining it, more dangerous, more real. The figure's gaze found hers again, unflinching. He saved me. He told me if I made it out, find you. Her breath broke. The folded paper against her chest felt heavier than armor. Martinez shook his head, disbelief sharp in his laugh. This is garbage, a trick. They're feeding you what you want to hear. But she knew that look in the figure's eyes. She knew it too well. It was the same one she'd carried since her brother's last breath, the weight of someone else's survival. The older soldier's voice cut the silence. We don't get to pick truth here. We only get to pick survival. Decide quick. They'll be here in minutes. And suddenly the choice wasn't just hers. It was theirs. She clenched her jaw, rifle tight in her hands. Not yet, not me. The silence of the alley screamed for an answer. How many times could silence break her before she stopped answering? The alley pressed close around them. Martinez's eyes burned with fury. The older soldier's calm was stretched thin, and the figure's confession still rang in the air like a bell that wouldn't stop. Enemy voices echoed down the street, boots on stone, closer. Her chest ached. This was it, the moment when all her choices, all her silence, demanded a price. She gripped her rifle, the steel grounding her. We move west now. Martinez barked out a bitter laugh, still dragging dead weight. But the older soldier nodded. She's command here. His eyes flicked toward her, steady, unreadable, for better or worse. The figure stayed at her side, silent, breathing fast but watching everything, trusting her. They broke from the alley. The world narrowed to sound and motion, the crack of gunfire, the echo of shouts, the pounding of her heart. They cut through a side street, weaving, dodging. Martinez cursed at every corner. The older soldier covered their backs with precision. Then it happened. The street ahead erupted in sparks. A heavy round slammed into the wall near her head. Another clipped Martinez's shoulder, spinning him with a raw scream. She froze, instincts colliding with terror. Open ground, no cover, enemy dug in ahead. Trapped. The older soldier dragged Martinez behind a cart, pressing a bandage to the wound. We don't push through this, he snapped. Not all of us. The truth lay bare in his eyes. Someone had to stay. Someone had to give silence an answer. Her hands shook around her rifle. She knew it before anyone said it. I'll hold them, she whispered. Martinez's head jerked up, rage and pain in his eyes. Like hell you will. The older soldier met her gaze. He saw it, he understood, he didn't argue. The figure's hand gripped her sleeve suddenly, desperate. Their voice cracked. He wouldn't want this. Her throat burned. He's not here. But her brother was, in the folded note against her chest, in the memory of his last look, his last words, in the way this figure carried his shadow forward. She placed her rifle in their hands. The figure stared, stunned. Keep moving, she said. Her voice was steady, final. Get him out, get yourself out, that's what he wanted. Martinez swore, struggling to rise, but the older soldier held him down. He didn't stop her. The figure's eyes filled, but they didn't argue either. They knew. She stepped into the open street, air sharp in her lungs. The world slowed. Every sound, every heartbeat, every shadow etched itself deep. She raised her sidearm, breath calm, focus absolute. The first shot cracked. She dropped one, then another. She moved like the silence itself, measured, unshaken. Behind her she heard boots retreating, the scuff of feet pulling away, the figure's ragged breaths fatting with distance. She kept firing, kept holding, kept answering the silence. And when the last round left her hand, When the street blazed with fire and dust, she didn't think of death. She thought of her brother's voice, soft in memory. Not yet, not you. The silence of the field finally spoke. Not an end, not defeat, but dignity. When the guns quieted, when the smoke settled, there was no cheer, no witness. Only the empty street, the faint trace of footsteps vanishing west, and her stillness, etched forever into the silence she had carried all along. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.